Blog Talk Radio.
It seems we have a problem. I would like to introduce Bigfootspad Paranormal Investigations Team.
And welcome to another edition of BFP Paranormal Radio. And on the lines with me today, we have me, King Sasquatch, also known as Jeremy.
King Gray, also known as Tim.
Mothman Poirier, also known as Nick.
And Archangel, also known as Brent.
And today's show, we are going to be talking about the Hellhounds of Eldorado Canyon in Nevada. And this show is something that's very near and dear to me because I was on a couple of TV shows recently about this. So anyways, let's get started with today's show. What do you guys think about being back on the air after about a year of not doing anything?
It's good to be back.
Yeah, long overdue.
Yep, I feel the same way.
Well, I guess we'll get started with a little bit of news topics for today. Tim, would you like to share?
Sure. This one's, it's called, the article's name is Concern After No 2013 Loch Ness Monster Sightings. And it says, ironically, in 2013, it was the 80th anniversary of the first modern-day sighting of Nessie, which is sad because, after all, now there's no sightings. So it says, Kevin Carleon, the high priest of the White Witches of the United Kingdom, has proclaimed a spell that he placed on Loch Ness to protect Nessie from, exploitation of fraudsters. He said that explains the non-appearance. He goes, I personally believe Nessie is a ghost of a dinosaur who has regularly been seen in the loch. But spirit creatures have been so exploited over the years, I decided to put the next carrot and exorcism on it. But he said it's okay, though, because the White Witches vowed to return this summer to lift the spell and put Nessie back. And then it says, along other things with the controversy, it says, the existence of Nessie peaked in the 1960s when the Loch Ness Bureau investigation was set up, but unfortunately 1972 was closed due to lack of funds. And it also said last year Nessie was actually placed on among the top 18 mysteries of all time. And the best thing of all here, it says actor Charlie Sheen recently spoke out saying he had a surprise search for Loch Ness Monster last year with a bottle of whiskey on his boat, he said. And he admitted he wants to return with American TV host Jay Leno to resume the monster hunt. So I thought that was a pretty good article.
So you said Charlie Sheen coming back to look for Jay Leno?
Yep, Charlie Sheen said he went on a surprise monster hunt for Nessie last year, and he said he wants to return with Jay Leno.
That should be interesting.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I wish I could go.
I know, me too. And then I have another one here. It says, this next article is called Wobbly Alien Planet with Wild Seasons Found by a NASA Telescope. And it said, astronomers have discovered an alien planet that wobbles in such a dizziness rate that its season must fluctuate wildly. The faraway world, which is 2,300 light years away, is under the constellation Cygnus, which was discovered by NASA's planet-hunting Kepler telescope. It says it orbits a pair of 2 red dwarf stars every 66 days. So it said, throughout all the planet's fast-changing seasons, however, no forecast would be friendly for humans. The warm planet is gassy in the upper region like Neptune, but it orbits way too fast to its 2 parent stars to be in the habitable zone, which is said it would allow liquid water, but then at the same time, because the season is so rapid, it would freeze within 66 days. So it would go summer to winter in 66 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it does this, it says 18 times a year.
Well, Tim, I would like to make one correction. You said that it was 23 million light years away, and you said it was far, but in the vast expanse of the universe, there are next-door neighbors. Who are you to say that it's far?
Yeah. Didn't you have an article too, Nick, you wanted to report?
Yeah, I was going to say recently they found some more skulls of giants in Texas, which are purportedly the largest human skulls ever found. And there were some very similar skulls and bones found in some caves here in Nevada. And I remember I've heard stories of the Paiute Indians in Nevada going against these red-haired giants, and these bones seem to back that story up. Jeremy, what do you know about that stuff? I think you know a lot about Nevada history and that type of thing. So, do you know?
Yeah, well, the red-haired giants. I was actually on another radio show, the Talk with Vince show, and we were talking about that for a little bit. Over in Lovelock, Nevada, they found some strange giant skulls and giant, I don't know what you'd call them, giant bones and giant human remains. It's pretty crazy to think about it. That they said that these bones were authentic, and they have no reason to be there, and they have no idea where they came from. They claim that there was human artifacts nearby, like wherever these beings came from. They actually lived in this cave system undetected. And I know we talked on one of our shows about these for a little bit. What's your opinion on that, Brent? You think that there could be, or could have been, or could be giants living on the planet now?
I have not from my own research, but from what I've seen on other websites and whatnot, and a little bit of research, they do have, like around the world, they've found a lot of giant skeletons. I think one was like in Malaysia, I think, where they found like giant skeletons, and next to those they actually found like dwarf skeletons also. So I think it could be possible. I mean, not maybe now, but maybe in the past they have been around.
Yeah, that's true.
Crazy.
So you think that they could be around, what you're saying? I was thinking maybe they could be like Bigfoot bones or something like that.
Possibly. Or missing one
yeah,
of
it's
some
possible.
sort.
I mean, as early as 5,000, 6,000 years ago, which was the timeline of when the Bible was being written, there's evidence to suggest that our ancestors, the early Homo sapiens, had a lot of contact with Neanderthals and some other hominid species that lived in Asia and also that lived in Mesoamerica and other parts of the world. There were these separate hominid species, and
like subhumans.
Yeah, they were like subhuman species, and I mean, they met each other. They fought against each other. There's even evidence in our own genetic code, because I don't know if you guys knew this, but Europeans on average carry a 5% amount of Neanderthal DNA. So early humans were mating with Neanderthals. So we're talking about some pretty close encounters between the different human species and subspecies.
Well, I know that they said that some people nowadays, if they have strong Neanderthal-like traits, that some of them will have like giant foreheads, or they may have like the long dark hair, or things like that. We had a friend that was actually pretty smart with that. I don't know if you recall me.
Yeah, I mean, there are people like that around. They exhibit large amounts of body hair and look almost caveman-like. There are people like that in the world, and I'm not talking about the Geico commercial guy, but yeah, there is evidence of our ancestors mating with Neanderthals, and there's evidence now of our ancestors fighting these giant humans. So it just really opens a picture as to what life was like for Homo sapiens 10, 20, 30,000 years ago.
So do you think that a normal, like say a woman, would be able to mate with a Neanderthal man? Like, would they be able to have children, for instance? Or so what you're saying is their genetics would be good enough?
Well, yeah, it could have happened, and they did. I mean, they did studies on European people, white people have Neanderthal DNA, and then they did a genetic study on Asians, and they found out that the Asian people, especially those in the Pacific Islands, have a large amount of a DNA of a caveman called the Denisovians, who are somewhat like the hobbits, or the other...
Yeah, we've had topics about them before.
Yeah, so there's evidence that early Homo sapiens in Asia and the Pacific Islands were having children with Denisovians, or these hobbit people.
Well, that's interesting.
It's a pretty
they don't really
interesting
hear about
thing.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a scientific scandal they kind of try to keep under wraps, because it sounds kind of freaky to think that people were having sex with and having children with basically what was a different species. So it's kind of disturbing. It's kind of disturbing to think about it, but it happened, and that's where different types of people that are around today have come from.
Yeah. You want me to start with the next topic, Jared? Okay, this one I found to be really interesting, but yet scary as heck at the same time. It's called Ancient Plagues DNA is Revived from a 15-Year-Old Tooth. Scientists have reconstructed the genetic code of a strain of bacteria that caused one of the deadliest outbreaks and pandemics of all time in history. 1,500 years ago, they did this by finding the skeletons of people that died by the plague and extracting the DNA from traces of blood inside their teeth. The plague struck in the year 541 under the reign of Roman Emperor Justinian. So it's usually called the Justinian plague, but the emperor himself actually got sick but yet recovered, and he was, quote, one of the lucky ones. Some of the estimates are that the plague itself could have been 50 million people, says biologist David Wagner of the Northern Arizona University. It's just thought the Justinian plague was actually led partially to the downfall of the Roman Empire due to the lack of population. And it said the plague swept through Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia. Historians say that when it arrived in Constantinople, thousands of bodies piled in mass graves. And it says that the bacteria itself was spread by fleas. After someone got infected by a flea bite, the microbes would travel to the nearest lymph node and start multiplying. So yeah, you would guess this mass would start swelling in the lymph node, which is known as the baboob, says Wagner. That's where the term, the bubonic plague, comes from.
Oh.
Yeah, but it says these days, although antibiotics that could help slowly stop the plague, would still not be potent enough to really stop it. So, yeah, that's wonderful. Some mad scientist wants to bring that back to life.
Yeah. Why couldn't they have just looked at the teeth and analyzed it and said, oh, that's good enough? No, let's inoculate a bunch of it and bring it back to life. That's a great idea.
Yeah, especially as I said, like modern medicine could only slowly cure it in small dosages. Like it can't even really stop it.
No, I mean, it's something that just grows so fast and spreads that it's impossible to stop. It's like a wildfire. Again, this just
yeah,
sounds
and Brent
like
wanted to be
really
the first
dumb
test
idea.
subject on it. Brent wanted to be the first modern test subject.
Oh, yeah. You know it. You know that new frontier, bubonic frontier?
Yep.
Bubonic.
One more news article here. Actually, two more, but I got this one's interesting too. It says a UFO video was shot. It was a fireball video shot over Saudi Arabia. It says there's a video that shows an unidentified flying object moving through the sky of the night sky on Thursday, January 16th, in the Saudi Arabian city of Medina. The UFO was reportedly spotted at 9 p.m. At least two lights were visible moving through the sky in the videos. And it said, creating the possibility that the UFO was actually multiple objects. So it's kind of interesting. I watched the video myself. It is really weird.
Tim,
You don't hear
it wasn't
from the Middle East.
It wasn't a fireball. It was Muhammad riding on a comet saying, "What's up to his peeps down in Medina?"
Oh God.
Robert would have liked that.
What's up, Allah Akbar? You know, he just dropped him. He did what they said. He got on that rock in Jerusalem and floated up to heaven. So I'm just saying maybe he can fly on comets too.
Yeah. And then my last article for the evening, it says there's a new, quote, Titan dinosaur that was discovered in China. Paleontologists have pieced together a new species of sauropod dinosaur from its fossil remains. It's named the Yangming-Julahan Datanai. The recent dinosaur lived more than 100 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. Despite it being a juvenile, the specimen was still over 60 feet long. And it says the find is particularly interesting because the large sauropod dinosaurs were thought to mostly have disappeared by the end of the Jurassic era. But this concept leads to believe that the specimens were all the way up to the early Cretaceous period. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty cool. Really, really big dinosaur has been
Except that
found.
name is horrible. I probably slaughtered the hell out of that name because it was so long. Ching chong chu pam hao la la la.
Ni hao, that's all I know how to say in Chinese.
Well, Nick, in other words, one last thing before we get started with tonight's topic. Can you talk about a little bit of team news?
Well, we're going to try to start doing more again. It's just been tough because two of us live very far apart from the other two, and with work and that type of thing, life has just kind of thrown us some curveballs. But we are trying to look at different plans for an international paratour, which we may do this summer or the next. We have to see what our finances will be and that type of thing. But our first plan that we're looking at is perhaps going down to Antarctica and going to the St. George's Island, where there's an abandoned whaling town where a lot of people have died, and many explorers that tried to go to Antarctica crashed over there, and they died there as well. So it would be a pretty cool place to do a ghost hunt. However, we're looking at possibly having to get a boat in Argentina and then take a 3-day sail over to the St. George Islands, where it's uninhabited. There's nobody there, and we don't know anything about sailing. So as fun as that sounds, we might have to rework our plans.
Yeah, we're going to have Brent be Captain Brent.
All aboard the St. George Islands.
Right, Brent, you're going to be the captain?
Yeah, I'm going to work you guys to the bone, the whale bone.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to get started with tonight's topic. We have about an hour and 10 minutes in the show. All right, well, we're going to get started. We're talking about the Hellhounds of Eldorado Canyon. For those of you who don't know where Eldorado Canyon is, it's over by Lake Mead and Lake Mojave near Las Vegas in Nevada. I'm going to give a little bit of history about the Eldorado Canyon area, and then we'll get a little bit into the history of the Hellhounds and that sort of thing. The Eldorado Canyon area was first settled by the Spaniards back in the 1700s, about the 1770s, primarily due to gold discoveries and its close proximity to the Colorado River. The Spaniards ran out of gold veins and began mining silver and left the area shortly after. Around 1860, Civil War deserters from both the Union and Confederates settled the area and opened up silver, gold, copper, and lead mines. The deserters thought that the remoteness of the area would keep authorities from searching for them at the location, and the river would provide easy access for transportation. Steamboats and riverboats were said to have docked at an old dock named Nelson's Landing, and it's known as Lake Mojave in modern times. The settlers changed the name of their settlement from the original Spanish given name of El Dorado to Nelson, after a prospector who was killed in 1897. Many of the mines around Nelson were full operation until around 1940 or 1950. The most famous of the mines being the Chachaticup mine. At its population high, Nelson was home to around 500 residents, and today about 30 people live there. So the story of these hellhounds starts back in the 1700s when the Spaniards were here. They started these camps, or these small towns, as you could call them. And what ended up happening was these strange reports of these ghostly dog-like figures started appearing. We're going to start talking about the different types of hellhounds. There's stories that involve ghost-like entities, and then there's ones that involve real-life cryptozoological creature type things. The first non-ghost hellhound sightings appeared once the Civil War deserters began settling the area. Reports of mine owners being murdered, robbed, and other crimes came along with the flood of settlers. Naturally, as a source of protection, mine owners would frequently bring dogs to guard their claims and help ward off potential thieves and unwanted guests. As many of the mines became deserted, several mine owners were noted in setting the claim of setting dogs free to wander. Some early reports, I've been told, say that these hellhounds would come up to the mining areas at night searching for food or curiosity. Miners would say that the large dog-like creatures that weren't coyotes or any dogs they'd ever seen. One theory suggests that maybe the hellhounds are actually mining claim dogs' offspring that maybe with wild dogs such as coyotes, but it hasn't been proven yet. Reports of hellhounds died down once many of the big mines in the area closed, just because there's less people there. Man, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, sounds like.
What do you think of that, Nick? Do you think that do you think that there could be a possibility that these hellhounds could be strange mutated dogs?
That is a possibility, that there could be a population of mutated dogs in that area, because in biology, they would a dog like that would meet the requirements of a subspecies, which is a member of a species that gets severely isolated from the rest of the members of its species, and then it develops mutations and whatnot. I mean, there's an example of a tribe in Africa where the people were so isolated for so long and interbred for so long that they only have 2 toes on their feet. The toes have morphed into just 2 big giant toes on their feet. So it's been argued that they're literally a subspecies of human, because they look like aliens almost, with some of their facial features and then the feet with the 2 giant toes. I could bring you pictures later if you want to see them. They're pretty interesting. But in relation to the hellhounds, it is possible that some dogs could have escaped from some of these early settlements, and then they could have gotten mutated somehow from something in the area. I don't know if there's any source of radiation or whatnot, but there could have been some sort of mutation, and these dogs could have been interbreeding for the past couple hundred years because it is such an isolated area that could sustain a small population of mutated dog.
So what you're saying is you do think that these could be a mutated dog-type animal. Before we get into the other
possible.
types of...
This is a long shot,
the other types we'll get into later, of course.
Yeah. There's a long shot, but it's definitely possible that a couple hundred years ago some dogs escaped from their owners and then they became mutated for whatever reason, and they've been interbreeding for so long that the mutations have kind of compounded on each other, and we could be seeing a very small population of a freak of nature. I mean, there's another example, the coyotes in Texas that people have been saying are the chupacabra for a long time, the hairless coyotes. Those coyotes have been mutated, and they've been interbreeding with each other as on a population, and these strange-looking canine creatures have emerged from that population of mutated coyotes. So there's a modern example of something that could be classified as a hellhound right there.
So, Brent, what's your opinion on all this? I haven't really asked you.
I don't really know a lot about the whole hellhounds thing. I think it's really farce for me. But, I mean, it does have has like, I know some people say they're like ghosts or like demon type dogs and stuff like that, and or just ghosts of like dogs or something. But for me, it's not really a well-traveled path, I guess you could say. I've never really delved in the hellhound thing until you went on the show and talked about it. So,
but Brent, with the possibility of the hellhounds being a mutated creature, does it sound like something that is along the lines of what something that you think might be plausible, though?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of animals have mutated or adapted to their surroundings, so it definitely is possible.
Mhm. So, anyways, with these sightings, Nick, can you talk a little bit about the different types of features that people report with some of these hellhounds?
Well, they are most of the time reported a dark brown or a black. They're reported with mange, and they are also purportedly very large. That's the information that I've gathered from the various reports that I have seen.
So these creatures are reported to have giant teeth. They have giant teeth, different types of fur. Pretty much the most common ones that you hear about are either a tannish color. This could because of the desert area that they live in. Hard to say. But anyways, they're different types of fur. They have jagged teeth. I've even heard people talk about a saber-tooth-like look to them. I know, what was it, Nick? When you and me were being interviewed for Haunted Highway, I know you ended up not going on the show, but I know that you gave a report about some hellhound that you had been on site and actually seen the footprints, or you had been to the location a couple of days after it happened. Can you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, we got a report from the area saying that someone was just hiking down in the foothills of the Mojave Lake area out there near Nelson, and they heard a rustling in the bushes and what sounded like a violent conflict going on between some animals. and they went to go check it out being curious, and they saw some ducks flying out of the bushes being chased by what they described as a dark brown dog with very large teeth. And I even think they said it had red eyes, if I remember correctly. It's been a little while since I've had to recall this story, but yeah, Jeremy and I drove down there the couple days after of receiving the report, and we went and saw some prints which were really weathered because I think it rained or something around the time that this happened, but you could make out some tracks of a very large canine that had stepped in the area. I mean, we couldn't have definitively ruled out that it might have been a cougar or maybe a very large coyote or something, but there were some tracks that were found near the riverbed down in those lowlands where the witness was hiking.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about those tracks, Jared, when we saw them?
Well, the tracks were bizarre. It looked like something very heavy had come through the area. It looked like some of these bushes were shredded, like something was thrashing around in these bushes. I don't recall if the animal had gotten these ducks or these birds, whatever they were, but that story actually, I don't know if it made it onto the show or not, but interesting. I have a couple of sighting reports that I would like to say really quick. This one was sent to us a couple of years ago. It says, "This is posted for my son. About 12 years ago, my son and his wife were visiting an unnamed town for their third honeymoon. They rented an older boat and drifted along Lake Mead or Lake Mojave. Around 2 in the morning, my house phone rang off the hook with my son frantically shouting that he'd just seen a mutant dog with a piercing howl attempting to catch a duck. He forwarded the details as the 4-foot mangy dog and with terrifying overlapping teeth. He said the dog failed to catch the ducks and ran off hungry when they shined the flashlight onto the shore." And I actually did a follow-up with this, and the follow-up says, I would say that it was about 2 a.m. when we started hearing noises near the cove we were stopped at for the night. We heard what sounded like sudden splashing and wings flapping. We both leapt out of bed and opened the windows of the sleeping area of the house to see some kind of large wolf creature trying but failing to catch some ducks that were in the water close to shore. My wife shined an emergency flashlight at the wolf, and the thing ran away quickly. This wolf was very large with long teeth that hung beneath the jaw parts of its mouth, almost like a saber-toothed tiger. The eyes shined yellow when the light hit it, when we lost track of it when it ran away. So, something quick to note. She said that it had saber-toothed tiger-like teeth. This is a little stretch, but Nick, do you think that maybe they could have seen some kind of a saber-toothed cat? Maybe it wasn't a dog at all?
It's possible that they saw a saber-toothed cat, but I think that it's far more unlikely that it's far less likely that they saw a saber-toothed cat than they saw a mutated dog, like I said at the beginning of the show. I think it's far more likely that a population of mutated dogs that has been isolated from civilization and other dogs is a much better explanation for that. But there's a very long shot of them seeing a saber-toothed cat, yes.
Well, do you think that possibly this could have just been a dog that grew those giant teeth because of adaptation over the years? Or what do you think would be why would it sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Why would they have that, do you think? Like, what would be the significance of having those teeth?
Well, long teeth, at least on saber-toothed cats and other carnivores, are used for grabbing and tearing flesh. And depending how long those dogs have been in the area, they may have evolved those teeth to tear the flesh from their prey, but I'm not sure of any
large game animals that live in the area, or it just could be a mutation because of generation after generation of interbreeding between these dogs. So I think that is probably a better explanation, because there are no large game animals that I know of that live in the Nelson area, because it's mostly desert. However, they could have evolved them to tear flesh like other carnivores have in history, but I think it's more likely just a mutation that has resulted from the generation after generation of interbreeding between these different dogs.
That's actually, I couldn't have said that better myself.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways, well, the next story I'd like to mention, it says, "Hello, Jeremy. This was on June 17th of 2012. I decided to write you this email to tell you that there's some kind of monster roaming around Nob Hill. I have relatives that live in Surfside, and we just seen something scary walking along the road on the way to Nelson's Landing about an hour ago. The cross streets," it says the cross streets, "we were driving my Chrysler northbound when the headlights came across what looked like a cross between a coyote and a werewolf on all fours. The monster turned its head to its immediate left to get a good look at us as we passed by. It had yellow eyes in the headlights with unusually long teeth. My cousin said that it had blood on its head like it had been eating something, but I didn't see it when I glanced out the driver's window. If it weren't for its desert color pattern, I'd say it was a mutated lion on the loose. It was big." And it says, "Have you heard or seen anything about this?" So, Brent. You there, Brent?
Yes.
All right, well, have the sighting story I just said, do you notice any similarities between the two stories, or do you think that these could be the same creature?
They could be. They could be the same creature. I mean, if they did see, like saber-tooth-like fangs on it, maybe if you could get a better description, I guess, because it doesn't seem like that last one. They got a real good look at it. Like they said, it was it looked about the size of a lion.
They said it looked like a lion. I didn't think it was even a dog at all.
You know, guys, I was going to say, I could play skeptic's advocate and remind you guys, remember when we saw what we thought were very large dogs running in the mountains of California a couple of years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Our furry friends. Maybe they're just seeing some mountain lions that have very large teeth. Well, actually, mountain lions do have very large teeth, so maybe they're just seeing mountain lions that are growling at them and getting defensive. I'm not saying that's that, but a skeptic would probably ask that question of us.
Yeah. That's very true. They could be, because mountain lions, they don't generally stay up in the mountains. They usually they'll usually stay in the mountains, but they'll come down if their food source like deer and elk and whatnot is scarce. They'll come down into like the lowlands and like the low-lying areas and look for food there. So it could be a mountain lion.
That's true. We have about 51 minutes left in the show. We're going to go on a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to continue talking about the Eldorado Canyon Hellhounds. And you're listening to BFP Paranormal Radio.
I love basso, it's rich in chocolate tea. Chocolate-flavored basso is mighty good for me. Mama puts it in my milk for extra energy. Basco gives me iron and sunshine vitamin D. Oh, I love basso, that's the drink for me.
Up from the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, it's man in the sky. Godzilla, I've got to Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
You know how bad my voice sounds? Well, it feels just as bad.
And we're back on BFP Paranormal Radio. Sorry, that last commercial was Babe Ruth telling a speech. Brent really likes that one.
He's my favorite.
But,
Pachishkin.
Yeah, well, is that Nick?
His favorite, like Pachishkin.
Yeah. Well, continuing on, we're talking about the Eldorado Hellhounds. Well, before we get started with more sighting reports, I'd like to talk a little bit about the other type of hellhound. We were talking a little bit about the cryptozoological type hellhounds. We're going to talk about the ghostly kind. And in order to start off with this, I have to tell a little bit of history of the area again. The Cahoe Indian legend has a lot to do with some of the modern-day hellhound sightings, say some individuals. Cahoe the Indian was born sometime around the 1880s on Cottonwood Island near Nelson, Nevada. Due to the nature of his father, said to be a Mexican miner, white settler, and neighboring tribesman, he was outcasted after birth. Cahoe is noted to have also been born with a clubbed foot, which is now one of his trademarks. Cahoe grew up much of his life on a reservation in Las Vegas, where he worked as a laborer at multiple mining claims, including Nipton, Crescent, Searchlight, etc. Eventually, Cahoe killed a man named Henry Bismarck in 1910 during a drunken dispute and fled. He was said to have killed at least 2 to 5 other individuals before hiding out in the Eldorado Canyon hills, where he turned into a renegade. He frequently reported to have killed prospectors and people traveling in the area for their supplies, such as food and other goods. Some of the crime scenes had clubbed footprints found near the bodies and victims, putting blame on Cahoe. The murderers stopped around 1930, and Cahoe wasn't seen alive after this point. It seems that he disappeared off the face of the earth even after a $3,000 reward for his capture was placed and search parties looked for him. In 1940, a mummified Indian body was found high in a cave near Nelson, which is now the Eldorado Canyon, that was later identified as Cahoe. The renegade Indian was reported to have killed around 25 people before his death and was Nevada's first mass murderer. A good majority of hellhound mystery believers say that the hellhounds may be a result of a type of curse he put on the land, or his rage turned into living hellish creatures. What do you think of that theory, Brent?
I do remember you telling me that story. I'm not too sure how he would be able to do that, though. Like, you know, he was like a very angry person, obviously, with a lot of mental issues, I would assume. But transform your rage and hatred into hellish hounds. I'm not saying it's like skeptical or anything. I'm just saying that must be a very creative way to let out your anger after death.
You're going to let out your anger and form a Tyrannosaurus Rex?
You're that angry? Oh, jeez.
Well, what I was going to say was, they said that they think that he might have put a type of curse on the land also, is another theory. Because Cahoe the Indian was a wanted fugitive, and he pretty much hated everybody and everything, from the way it sounds. He was Nevada's first serial killer, in a sense.
Which makes him stupendous.
But, Nick, what do you think of that? Nick, you've heard about the curse of Chief Cornstalk they think might have something to do with the Mothman sightings. Do you think maybe that there could be something similar going on with this?
Yeah, there could be a curse from the Indian outlaw, or maybe just a curse perhaps from an Indian tribe that lived there a long time ago. Maybe they did it in retaliation against the white men taking their land. But whenever we delve into these Indian things, there are a lot of neat and mysterious concepts with these Indian curses and burial grounds, and and whatnot. But the bottom line basically is you don't really mess with that stuff. You don't mess with the Indians is basically what I'm saying, because they do seem to have some sort of an ability to tap into nature in ways that Europeans and other peoples don't know how to do. So I wouldn't say it's impossible, very, very unlikely, out of all the various different causes for the hellhounds, but definitely a possibility that it is a curse from an Indian, and Kehoe could have put a curse on the land himself.
Or do you think maybe, to bring this a little bit further, maybe he could have put a curse on some of the animals or something?
Well, it could be a skinwalker, and then I know that in Seattle there are these tunnels where allegedly these wolf men inhabit these tunnels in Seattle, where they used to capture Indians and use them as slaves, and they used to walk them through these tunnels. So there's a legend that these Indians, in retaliation against the white man for making them slaves, transformed themselves into these wolf creatures in Seattle. So I think that maybe if Kehoe knew of the curse or the spell or incantation or whatever you want to call it, he knew how to do something similar in retaliation against his enemies. He unleashed the wolf spirits on the land, as the Indians in Seattle have supposedly unleashed the spirits of the wolf on the white man there.
Well, some of the local Native American tribes refer to these animals as devil dogs, for that sense. I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
They have like a name for them. Well, the other theory out there, you have the physical cryptozoological creature, then you have this curse. The other theory is that maybe these creatures are ghosts. And the theory behind the ghosts are when many of these Spanish mines from the 1700s up until the Civil War, these miners, when they had these mines, they would frequently get guard dogs to guard these mines. And sometimes these dogs would die from mysterious reasons, or when they would close these mines, sometimes they'd let the dogs free or they would kill the dogs. So some people think that what these are is they're actually ghosts of these mine claim dogs. I don't know if that fits some of the sightings, because some of these sightings take place away from the mines, down in the valleys and down by the highway. What's your opinion on that, Tim?
I'm sorry, what's that, Jeremy? My phone's cutting out.
What's your opinion on the ghost theory?
Oh, the ghost theory? I think it's very likely, because I know most paranormal investigations you see on TV and everything about the hellhounds, they actually believe that it tends to be more spiritual, sometimes rather than a cryptid. Like another one you're on, for example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a lot of people take it from that point of view, a good majority. I know most people we talk to, too, I know they tend to think that, don't they?
Well, there's some stories you hear on the internet that are kind of bogus. Like, I believe in having trigger objects for ghost hunts, and I believe there's ways of making ghosts appear. But, Nick, there was a very well-known TV show on Sci-Fi Channel I appeared on, and they were rattling some old chains at the front of a cave, screaming to make these hellhounds summon to appear in front of the camera, which I don't recall that they actually worked. But, Nick, what's your opinion on that? Do you think that's an effective way to try to get these things to come out?
Rattling... I don't know if rattling chains is the best way to get these things to appear. I'm not sure if an object would make them appear if they're there. I mean, objects have been used in rituals for thousands of years to make spiritual things happen. But I'm not sure if there are any objects associated with the hellhounds at all, so I really can't say whether the chains are a good idea or not. All I do know is that when they did rattle the chains, nothing too interesting happened. However, didn't something blow over or something when they rattled the chains? I don't know if I'm remembering right.
Well, they think that they caught some evidence of a ghost in one of the mines, but they don't know if it was necessarily a hellhound or not. I was thinking personally, if these are ghosts of someone's pets or these dogs, you would think calling the dog by its name or kind of like a pet noise, like calling for a dog or something. That's what I thought would personally make them show up.
Yeah, that would seem more logical. However, I just don't know of any objects or anything associated with hellhound lore that could make these things appear or help to make them appear.
Well, I have a sighting report of the ghostly type, I was going to say. This is from a California resident that was visiting the area. He said, has any of your team members ever heard about hell dogs of Eldorado Canyon? I think I just seen one. I was with my buddies for a fun weekend at Nob Hill, setting up camp and seen a ghost dog in our camp. We spent the day on our dirt bikes and off-road trucks four-wheeling till about 6. While cooking dinner, my buddy Paul said he'd seen a coyote crouching in a defensive stand. My other friends, Helen and Mike, said they hadn't seen the thing and they were right next to him. After the hot dogs were done and everybody was fed and watered, we started a campfire to settle down and we went to bed for that day. I'd say it was 9 p.m. when we had all seen a big shadow of a dog on the tent wall. Helen screamed, and when she did, the shadow disappeared as the creature either disappeared or left the area. I came home today and looked up this animal, and it says it's called a hell dog of Eldorado Canyon. So, Brent, what's your opinion on that? Do you think why do you think that dog was there? Like, what was it doing?
I'm not sure. It could have just been, maybe it was there because one of the people that was there maybe looked like one of its owner, or like one of the owners of one of the hell dogs, and it was like, oh, I'm gonna show myself, like, oh, I'm right here. You left right where you left me, type of thing. Maybe, it didn't sound like it was aggressive, was it?
They said it was just crouching.
Yeah, it didn't sound...
Okay. Yeah, then, that's just my opinion.
Well, that's true. Nick, do you have anything to add to what Brent said?
Yeah, these ghosts, or rather these dogs, it could be ghosts. Could be somebody's pets just locked onto the location, like humans can be locked onto locations, because we have studied cases time and time again where people are linked to a location, such as the sheriff over in, what was it? What town was the sheriff ghost checking the doors, Jeremy?
That was Beatty.
Okay, yes, the sheriff ghost was checking the ghost in Beatty night after night. The footage that you guys took proved this. Perhaps these dogs are just in the area because they have some sort of an attachment to it, or, in other words, it's some sort of residual haunting where the dogs don't want to leave, they just want to stay there and guard the area, whether it was because they were guard dogs or maybe they feel just loyal to the area because their owner lived there. I'm not sure, but it could be some sort of a residual haunting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, perhaps.
I'm getting some questions on our chat room. They want me to talk a little bit about the haunted highway experience.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
About a year and a half ago, I was on the show Haunted Highway with Jack Osborne, Ozzy Osbourne's son, and I'm trying to think what Dana's last name was, and co-host Dana. we went out to Searchlight, and they interviewed me at the Searchlight Historical Museum, and we were supposed to go out and look for these hellhounds that night.
It was your museum, remember?
Well, which was what?
It was your museum. You were the owner and curator, remember?
Yeah. Well, anyway, so we met up at the museum, and we were talking about conducting this investigation. Well, they did the investigation that night. I guess ended up doing it a little bit early. I was supposed to go with them the day afterwards, but they ended up doing it earlier than expected. Well, they wanted me to review some evidence. They were down in one of these valleys over by the highway, and when Dana was walking in the middle of the field, they got the apparition of a dog creature walking through the desert. Well, I guess it had walked right past Jack and his co-host, and this thing didn't even look at them. It didn't even pay attention to them. It's kind of like a heat signature that was half there and half not. Is the best way I could explain it. Brent, you've seen the footage. What did you think of that? Like, could you describe it a little bit better than I did for our listeners?
Well, I did see the footage, but I didn't really watch the whole thing per se. I just it's kind of hard to explain. From what I remember, since it was like at least a year ago, I think what happened was they thought they saw it, but they couldn't really tell it was there because were they using like a FLIR camera or something like that?
Yeah, they're using one of those FLIR thermal cameras.
Okay, yeah, really hard to collect my thoughts on that because I haven't really thought much about it after what happened. So
yeah,
it's just really vague for me to try to remember all that because all I remember in my mind right now is like they were walking down like in between like a canyon or something like that, and then they were looking through the FLIR camera and they thought they saw something, and then it wasn't. They looked back and it wasn't there.
Yeah,
that's all. Yeah.
All right. Well, since I went over the different types of hellhounds, I'm going to get a little bit into some more individual sightings, and then I have a couple other things I wanted to bring up. This next sighting, it says, I saw you on Haunted Highway, Jeremy, and I thought I would take a moment of your time to tell you about my encounter with a hellhound near the Elephant Hills on the Arizona side of the Colorado River in 1998. My two teenage sons and I took our jet skis out for the day trip and came across a resting hellhound in the hills one afternoon. My then teenage sons were looking for a sturdy stick to set our handy chest on. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze here.
Bless you.
Sorry, I'm sneezing. Sorry, Lehman says, my then teenage sons were looking for a sturdy stick to set our handy chest on while we filled the skis with the extra gas for the ride back to the dock, and told me that a coyote was sleeping in dangerously close to our position. I went to investigate the coyote myself and seen what looked like a coyote sleeping under a shrub up on the mountainside. The coyote looked different from the others I've seen growing up. The coyote was the size of one of those Mastiff or Doberman dog breeds, and it was gray. Coyotes don't get that big. This had to be something else.
Wow.
So this thing was sleeping on the hillside. I guess I don't know how far away they were, but it scared them apparently. But I was thinking, this sounds like an actual living blood and flesh creature from what that report says. It doesn't really. I guess it could be a ghost just sleeping under the shrub, but I don't. What do you think, Nick? Do you think it sounds like a regular animal trying to get out of the heat?
Probably. It most likely was a cougar or something like that. If the guy was not close to the animal and was looking at it from the low point up at this animal resting on a hill, it could have been easy to mistake a mountain lion for a hellhound or anything else. So that's probably what it was for me. Just a mountain lion or maybe some other type of a large, as far as I know, the mountain lion is the only thing that would live in that area that meets this description. But
well, they don't have the trees or anything for a mountain lion up there, though. Like it's just kind of
very
like desert shrubs.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, like I said, it probably, like Brent said earlier, the mountain lions can come into the lowlands, like any animal does. They can wander from one habitat to another when there's a scarcity of food, water, or something else essential to their survival. So it probably was just a cougar resting underneath a shrub, and the witness, was looking at it from so far of a vantage point that he thought it was something else.
Well, they said it was dangerously close to them, so they were right up next to it or something, according to this. Well, my next sighting report. What's that?
I was like, it could have been a hellhound, I guess, or maybe it could have been a very, very big coyote. As I don't know exactly how big coyotes can get. Normally, I know they're not very big, but this could be an example of a really large coyote or an outlier. So I don't know. We weren't there, so I can't be exactly sure what to make of it.
Brent was there.
Brent's everywhere, and he's everywhere, nowhere at the same time. He's Brent. He's an all-seeing eye.
Like Sauron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of that.
Well, this story comes from the Cottonwood Cove area in Lake Mojave. They said that the creature they seen was brown or light-colored, between 4 to 6 feet tall. It had long tusks for teeth, said one caller, and long canine teeth that hang beneath the jaw or unusual. Its skittish behavior towards humans, and it has a very bushy tail or an absence of a tail at all, is what this person says. This other investigator sent me an email when I was getting notes for the show. And they said, I got a call in the middle of the night. They said, am I the only one to see a saber-toothed tiger in Clark County, which is down here? They said, am I crazy? So it sounds like what these people are almost reporting is like a saber-toothed tiger, or what they think is a saber-toothed tiger. It's kind of scary.
That is kind of weird.
Well, Nick, do you know the type of habitat that saber-toothed tigers used to live in?
Well, if I'm correct, saber-toothed tigers have been found to have lived in all different kinds of environments. Back, when they were alive, some have been found to have lived in very cold climates, and then there are others who lived in grasslands and in low-lying areas. Now, I'm not sure of the area Lake, or the area that Nelson is in, but I know for a long time, and probably around the time of the saber-toothed cats, Nevada was buried under basically a giant inland sea. So it would have been impossible for saber-toothed cats or any land-dwelling animal to live here. But maybe we're looking at a saber-toothed cat mystery, not a dog mystery. I don't know.
So you're thinking that this creature maybe was a animal that evolved over time, or maybe it came from somewhere else?
It most likely came from somewhere else, because evolution takes a long time if it's not acted on. If the process is not acted on by outside influences like radiation, which causes mutation,
at a much faster rate than natural mutations. But yes, it definitely seems that it did come from somewhere else, because if it's a saber cat we're talking about, it's not going to have come from Nevada, because, like I said, 10,000 years ago or something like that. I'll just throw 10,000 years ago out as an arbitrary date. 10,000 years ago, Nevada was covered by an inland sea. Vegas was completely underwater, and I believe Nelson was too. So no land-dwelling animal could have lived here. So whatever these creatures may be, if it's a saber cat or something like that, it is something that came from another part of North America. It's not something from the area. It's an invasive species, not a native species.
Well, they do have the Ozark howler back east and things like that are similar in nature, and different types of panthers that don't belong in certain areas of the country.
Yeah.
Well, this other sighting report, before I get into something else, it says, I received a phone call from a frantic caller who stated that he had seen a dog the size of a lion chasing after a jackrabbit in the mountains near Nelson's Landing. The man was a lone hiker on the mountain who said that he first noticed the bushy tail and thought it was a giant fox, though the creature pounced near the rabbit. The dog paid no attention to the hiker as it pursued the hare. When I asked if the dog could have been a coyote, I was told that it resembled a coyote in no way, shape, or form. The dog was too large, off-colored, and it had very large, jagged teeth, almost as if it had horns or saber-toothed tusks coming from its mouth. So that's one of my personal notes from the investigating that I've done. Sounds like these people don't even think it's a dog at all. Some people say they think it's like a saber-toothed cat. Like Nick said, it almost sounds like a saber-toothed cat mystery, not necessarily even a hellhound.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Most of those that you're getting, like most people say, it's more cat-like than dog-like.
Yeah, because all the sighting reports that I just read were my personal reports that I collected or that I had sent in to me. It sounds like this might even possibly be something different from the hellhounds. But if you notice, it sounds like it's more than just a ghost-like entity. Most people consider hellhounds to be ghost-like. This considers these things, according to what my sighting reports say, as actual living creatures.
Yeah.
So,
because most of them aren't really like at nighttime, are they? They're mostly during the day or at dusk.
A lot of them are in the dusk, almost like these creatures are nocturnal.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of big, large predators actually are nocturnal, so I think it makes sense.
Yeah, they are.
Right, Nick? I know you're smarter with that sort of thing than me.
Oh, yeah. Most predators, period, are nocturnal because it is easier for them to conceal themselves from their prey.
Mm-hmm.
So it only makes sense to me, too.
Well, we have about 20 minutes left in the show. Before we get to our last talking points for tonight's show, we're going to go on a quick commercial break, and you're listening to BFP Paranormal Radio.
I know Cool, and Cool's teaming up with a good balanced breakfast.
Teaming up with Mr. T cereal and getting on the team that knows how cool breakfast can be. You get a crispy corn taste with a touch of brown sugar. Teaming up with Mr. T.
It's cool.
Teaming up with Mr. T, golden sweet crispy teas. One bite and you're gonna be eating with a team that's teaming up with Mr. T.
It's cool.
Teaming up with Mr. T. Use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Clean pots and pans, just like a whiz.
Ajax cuts grease faster than any other leading cleanser.
You stop paying the elbow tax when you start cleaning with Ajax.
Ajax really polishes as it cleans.
So use Ajax, the foaming cleanser. Floats the dirt right down the drain.
Determined to rule the world.
And we are back on BFP Paranormal Radio. Today's February 8th, 2014, and we're talking about the Hellhounds of Eldorado Canyon. While we're on a commercial break, there's a couple of talking points that me and Nick were discussing and wanted to talk about. We were talking about the ghosts of the possibility of these hellhounds being a ghost. Well, Nick, I know Brent and Tim have been with me, but have you guys ever heard stories of haunted pets or animals of other types, like horses, dogs, things like that you could recall?
I have heard stories of that nature before in the past. I can't recall any specific ones off the top of my mind about hauntings by animals. However, I can tell a well-known story. A lot of people have been following this for a while, know of a sighting I had when I was a child. Nothing that is particularly amazing, perhaps, but I can share that if you wish. Well, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I was in my front yard playing whatever, I don't know, I was playing with my Tonka truck or something, we'll say, and I saw what I believed to be a large black cat, almost, it looked like a panther or something, and it ran into the woods from the street, and it ran into the woods, and I saw this animal, and I was both scared and fascinated at the same time, so I decided to chase after this animal to see if I could see what the heck I had just seen. And when I went to the forest to see where this thing went, it was gone. It had vanished. So to this day, the experience, it still mystifies me because...
What did the creature look like, Nick?
Well, I saw only a side profile of it, unfortunately, but it was, I would say, the size of a cougar, or I would say at smallest the size of a Saint Bernard, and at biggest like a cougar. It was quite large and it was all black, and it ran into the woods, and it almost, I would say, almost leapt into the woods. It didn't even run, really. It was more like a couple quick leaps, and it vanished, and there's no way that thing could have hid in the woods near my house, because the woods were thick, but they weren't that thick where something that big could have hid. I would have seen it. And to this day, like I said, it still mystifies me. So, actually, I gave this story to a producer of the Sci-Fi Channel. I don't think they used it, but they thought it was interesting enough to ask me about it, so I'll share it today.
I can say that if what I saw has any relation to the hellhounds, it would give more credibility to the ghost theory of the hellhound phenomena, because there was a lot of ghostly phenomenon around my house as a child. I could be here for hours telling everybody stuff I had seen as a child, from my first ghost experience to stuff that my sister had seen and so on and so forth. But bottom line, there's a lot of ghostly activity that went on at my childhood home, and there were Indian burial mounds in my backyard, to start off with. So that definitely wasn't something good to be living near. And then there was also, I remember this like yesterday, when I was playing in the woods, as I often did as a kid, I found a fire pit in front of this rock where there was this pentagram scribbled on a rock in a red substance. I don't know if it was paint or blood or whatever it was, but even though I didn't know what a pentagram was, I might have been 6 or 7 years old when I seen this, maybe 8. I was a little kid. I didn't know what the heck that stuff was back then. It freaked the crap out of me. I never went back. Oh, it's the first time I've heard that in a year, but had to happen. But the bottom line is, my childhood home in the area was a hotbed of paranormal activity, at least in relation to ghosts, and there was a good cause for that, because there were Indian burial mounds and teenagers running around at night doing quasi-satanic rituals. So,
well, I know that the hellhound mystery, they're actually reported in different parts of the country, like the Rhode Island, New Jersey, and all that have some of those stories. I know there was another TV show that wanted me to film for them. It was based out of Palm Springs, California, and they said that one of these animals had actually attacked a vehicle while someone was inside, and it trashed the vehicle. So what you could have seen was a hellhound, or maybe something similar to a hellhound in the East Coast. Do you know what time of year it was, Nick?
It was either during the summer or the spring, because I remember the leaves were very green and it was warm. So it was probably in Rhode Island, it was probably May to July that I saw these, or I saw this thing, whatever it was. So
yeah,
it was most likely during the summer, because Rhode Island isn't very warm any other point in the year. But
well, there's two quick questions that are coming out of our chat room. Sorry to cut you short, Nick. Brent, I think you'd like to answer this one. Do you think that there could be a possibility if these are cursed creatures that came up from this curse, or creatures that came from a ghostly source? Is it possible to exorcise these creatures, or can you make them leave in that sort of a sense?
That one's an interesting one.
I don't know, ask the White Witch of Scotland. Put an exorcism on Nessie.
Oh, I know. Yeah, he said he's going to come back and relieve him, though.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe he can exorcise the hellhound.
I'm not sure if you can. I'm not a trained exorcist or anything like that, but
in your opinion,
I think,
though, like, do you think that it sounds like something that would be possible?
I would think so, but another part of me thinks that it wouldn't be possible. Like I know a lot of things are tied to religion, like with exorcisms and stuff like that, and like animals, they don't really have a religion to be exercised to, I guess. So I don't think it would be possible. I mean, maybe there is some kind of, I mean, not really an exorcism, but maybe like a cleansing, maybe like what the Native Americans do. maybe that could help, I guess, move the spirits on to wherever they need to go.
True.
Well, I'm looking at our chat room right now, and there's a question for Tim, and it's asking, do you think that there's a mating population of these dogs still around in the area?
Well, I mean, if there's as many sightings as there are, it's a big possibility, because you can have more. If we're talking from a cryptid point of view, I should start with that. If we're talking like a cryptid point of view, yeah, there would have to be, in order for there to be more and more sightings all as often. But if we're talking for a spiritual point of view, I don't know. I guess you have to have tons of ghost dogs dying all the time.
So, do you think that there would have to not be very many of these? Because I know they said on the natural food chain, the higher up on the food chain you get, there's less large predators than there are like smaller animals, like game creatures, like deer, rabbits, and things like that. The Nelson Landing area is fairly small. I was wondering, Nick,
right.
How big of a breeding population do you think there would be? You think there'd have to be dozens or hundreds? Or I know you're not very educated on that sort of thing like me, but like...
There would have to be a breeding population, I would say, of at least 50 to 100 specimens, because if there's any less than that, it's going to be extremely tough for them to sustain a population. Now, what comes to my mind is if there is a breeding population of these things, how do they survive? Because there isn't a lot out there in the Nelson area. It's sparse desert. I mean, I guess these things could eat like rabbits and coyotes. Well, maybe they could eat coyotes themselves. But
they do have a bar and 2 restaurants in Surfside they could eat at.
Yeah, they could eat out of the dumpsters, I guess. But right, didn't we go to one of those once? One of the Searchlight.
Yeah, when we were out in Searchlight with one of our friends, I was telling you the story about a man that had been on the show with me. He said that the hellhounds actually were reporting to have eaten small pets in the area.
Yeah, I am somewhat skeptical of the cryptozoological standpoint or viewpoint on the issue, because I just don't think that there's enough out there to sustain a breeding population of these animals. I would definitely think that it's more likely that these things are either the product of an Indian curse or that there's some type of a residual haunting. I don't think that they can be a breeding population, because there's just not a lot of food and water out there to sustain any sort of a sizable amount of these creatures.
Okay, well, before we end the show, I was going to say, Tim and Brent, did you guys want to say your opinions on what you think these creatures are out of the theories that we've suggested, and what are your final thoughts?
Well, me personally, I like to think it's more like a spiritual, like I take it from more of like a spiritual aspect, only because, what TV is kind of portrayed it to be. But at the same time, like I said, I don't know. I believe it's more of a a spiritual point of view rather than a cryptid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of gonna go with Tim in the sense of, like, it's not really a living creature, but more of like a ghostly. I guess spiritual and ghosts are kind of the same thing, but I mean they're not. But anyways, they're see-through. But yeah, just the way I see it, they're kind of ghostly. I mean, they do have, it's like they're there and then they're not, kind of thing. Like people see it.
So you think they might be a hybrid type creature, maybe, like a skinwalker? You think they could be a weird hybrid creature, like a skinwalker?
Yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, skinwalker, that would be kind of scary, but yeah.
It's hard for me to really say. Part of me thinks that maybe that they actually are ghost-like. The other part of me thinks maybe these creatures the saber-toothed cat-like sighting, maybe that's something different altogether. I kind of think it might be two different things going on. But if I had to put my finger on one specific thing, I kind of want to say creature, like living creature, but like Nick was saying, if you actually live out here, it's very hard to picture more than like 10 or 12 of these things actually living out there. Well, we have about 3 minutes left in the show. I guess we'll end the show here in about a minute. Again, I wanted to thank all of our listeners that tuned into tonight's show, and I wanted to thank my co-host for joining me tonight. Our show next Saturday is going to be on the North American legend of the Melonheads. It's going to be a great show on some mythological, cryptozoological-like creatures that are reported in the Midwest.
Yeah. And
all
did you want to promote the show more,
Jared? Before we do our outro.
Everybody, take care. Have a good night.
Take care. Have a good one.
All right, everyone, and I want to promote our different websites, too, at the same time while we're on the air. You can go to bigfootspad.com to view all of our new upcoming information. You can also visit our YouTube, www.youtube.com/BFCteam. Or you can even check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/BFPteam. All right, everyone, have a good night.